So I'll go to item 8, and this is at page 11 of our agenda. This report relates to providing feedback to government and the Ministry for the Environment on the transformation of Aotearoa's resource management system, a large body of work. The motion is to delegate approval for this work. The only change here, members, is the Mayor will be represented by senior staff. So, Mayor, don't take this too seriously, Mayor, but we'll strike out the Mayor's name. The Mayor will be represented by senior staff in the motion before us. So we'll just take out the word Mayor in that motion. So I will...
I'm happy with that, Mr. Chair.
Good, thank you. And I will now hand over to Karen Kirk, Principal Strategic Advisor on Auckland Plan Implementation, and Denise O'Shaughnessy, Manager Strategic Advice, to outline this item for us. Karen Kirk, in your hands, I think.
Yes, thank you. Morena koutou. I've got a short presentation. Kalinda, can you bring it up?
Yes, we'll bring that up shortly, Karen.
Thank you. And we move on to the purpose. Yes, so this is the latest round of engagement being led by Ministry for the Environment on reform of the resource management system. And basically, it's to update stakeholders on where the government is up to in the reform process. And it's a restricted range of ratepayers. It's mainly local government and Māori. And also they're outlining their key components of the system design to date, where ministers have made decisions, and to get feedback on these. And ultimately, the feedback will inform the Natural and Built Environments Act bill and the Strategic Planning bill to be introduced in Parliament in late 2022. Next slide, please. So this is just to highlight where we are in the process. This is Council's third submission on resource management reform. It started way back in 2019 with the establishment of the review panel. Council made a formal submission on their issues and options paper before they released their report, New Directions for Resource Management in New Zealand, which outlined their recommendations to the government. Middle of last year, the Natural and Built Environments Act exposure draft was introduced to Parliament. It went through a select committee process, and again, Council made a formal submission. The Select Committee has released its report in November, and we circulated a memo to elected members shortly afterwards, which brings us to the current engagement. We're calling it feedback because Ministry for the Environment are looking for feedback on their discussion materials. Next slide, please. This just gives a very brief overview of the key components. Basically, it's proposed that the Resource Management Act is repealed and replaced by these, well, 3 acts, ultimately. Natural and Built Environments Act, which will outline stronger national direction within a national planning framework, and set out the process and content to be covered in new natural and built environment plans, which are quite similar to our unitary plan. The Strategic Planning Act will set out the process and content to be covered by regional spatial strategies, which are quite similar to our Auckland plan. And regional spatial strategies are expected to have stronger implementation arrangements through implementation plans and agreements. Next slide, please. This just outlines local government's role within the system. Probably one of the key changes is that regional spatial strategies and natural and built environment plans will be developed by joint committees involving central government, local government, and also iwi, hapu and Māori. We expect to see a stronger role for Māori within the system, and we're also expect to see a stronger role for monitoring and oversight. And the final slide. This is just what happens next. So we're working to a deadline of the 28th of February. As I said, the feedback will inform the bills, which are expected to be introduced later in the year. The Climate Adaptation Act we're not expecting that to be introduced until 2023 after the election. However, Ministry for the Environment have signalled that they'll be consulting on principles alongside the National Adaptation Plan quite soon. So basically, we're just seeking delegated authority for final sign-off of the submission. We're building on the points that we've made in the previous submissions, but there's some specific questions which we've gone out to staff and CCOs to fill some of those gaps. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, Karen. And Karen, I take it I'm sure members will be interested in making sure that our feedback is distributed, and there might be a bit of a quick turnaround time, but before it's formally lodged, members will be able to see it via email, correct?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, members, we have a motion before us. Can I have a mover for that, please? Mover and seconder? Do I have a mover?
I'm happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bartley. Do I have a second, please?
Happy to second, Chair.
Councillor Collins, thank you. So the motions are before us, members. Are there questions, members? It's reasonably straightforward at this stage. We'll be getting into the thick of this work later on. I do have one question here. Patai from Independent Māori Statutory Board Member Karen Wilson. Kia ora, Karen.
Kia ora, Chair, and kia ora, Karen. What a great name, eh? My pātai relates to any inclusion of recent engagement with Māori or mana whenua that may be included in feedback, or any key themes that potentially in previous engagement that Council may have had that will add. That's my pātai.
Thank you, Karen. Back to Karen.
Yes, absolutely. Ministry for the Environment are engaging broadly with Māori and specifically mana whenua. We've heard that they've already approached the mana whenua forum and that they will be preparing their own feedback for Ministry for the Environment. And absolutely, we're building on previous submissions, which had quite a strong component, and also feedback from Independent Māori Statutory Board. Key themes that have come through so far. There's the establishment of the National Māori entity, and Ministry for the Environment are inviting feedback on what their role could be. At the moment, they see their role in providing oversight of the system. A strengthened role for mana whakapono arohi agreements. I think Auckland Council is one of the few that have actually implemented this, and we can certainly provide feedback on that. And also a much stronger role for Māori in monitoring the effectiveness of plans and the system, as well as involvement in the committees that develop the plans.
Thank you very much.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Karen. Further questions I don't have. Karen, this is probably a little bit unrelated. It's not so much maybe directly part of government's work on their reform of the resource management system overall, but it's about signalled national policy statements. I'm referring to the national policy statement on productive land. which the Minister for the Environment indicated that it was going to be released probably about March last year. I wrote to the Minister about that time, inquiring, and gave him some information about the depletion of prime and elite soils that our research unit and our monitoring unit had uncovered, which is drastic. So what do you know of the status of the initial policy statement on productive land that was signalled? Has your unit or another part of our organisation, might be the strategy unit or plans and places, had discussions with ministry officials about the reason for the delay and the timing of when we might see that MPS on productive land?
Yes, I believe it's plans and places that have been following this quite closely. We've heard that the work has been delayed as a result of COVID, and we're expecting the final NPS later in the year. I believe this item comes up. Well, sorry, this issue comes up in relation to a later item on the agenda. So I'm sure they'll be able to give more comprehensive update then.
Okay, we'll pick it up at that item then. I think that's item 10 from memory. Okay, Karen. Members, further questions? I don't think I have any. It is moved and seconded. So I'll put that to the vote now. The motion's before us, the A, delegating authority, and the B as well as outlined. Putting that motion now, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Aye. To the contrary, no. And declare that motion carried. Thank you, Karen. Now we will go to item 9, and this is reasonably